You should be able to protect yourself in your home, your business and your property by any means necessary. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Nick Demetto, the Deputy Leader of the Katters Australian Party and also the member for Hinchinbrook. This morning I'm here with you to Re-KAP through Katters Australian Party Re-KAP podcast to talk about what KAP members of Parliament have been doing this week, not only in the electorate but also fighting for you in Canberra and Brisbane Parliament. This week, Bob Katter's been absolutely furious about the Albanese's government and the failure to include Copper String 2.0 and Hells Gate Dam in this year's 2022-2023 federal budget.
Anthony Albanese has visited the Hells Gate site and he has visited Hughenden twice. And I am hoping and praying that if he can find 5,000 million for alternative energy sources in Victoria, that he can find 5,000 million, which these stupid people associated with the last government were throwing up against the wall, $5 billion they'd proposed for this stupid Hells Gate to produce 70 farms, that he can take 5,000 billion to now do projects in North Queensland.
Bob Katter also met this week with Shane Knuth and banana growers and cane farmers in the middle of the Kennedy electorate that have been affected by feral pigs and the mess that they make. And in particular, the feral pigs that are actually breeding in our national parks and causing over $1 million worth of damage to crops in just that part of the electorate. I know in the Hinchinbrook electorate also we have been ravaged by feral pigs, and most of them are being bred and breeding in the national parks. And what they've called for this week is a number of things. Firstly, that there be a permit for recreational hunters to actually access national parks, to get in there and do the job that the state government should be doing, and that is controlling feral pig numbers. Also, calling for a feral pig bounty so that there is an incentive, a monetary incentive out there for those that are seeking to hunt feral pig to be actually paid for the good work that they're doing. Shane and Bob have also called this week for the federal and state governments to bolster the grants available to councils and growers to make sure that they're being able to manage feral pest numbers not only on their farms but also in council and state reserves. Most people don't know, but national parks across Queensland take up 130,000 square kilometres. That is a massive amount of land locked up in national park right now. And unfortunately, most of those areas are just the perfect breeding grounds for feral pigs. To get in there and allow feral pest management from not only recreational hunters, but also making sure those that are tasked to do the job have the funding available to do so is so important. And most people will say, most cane farmers or banana farmers will say, the worst neighbour to actually have isn't another grower next door, but is the national park. The state government isn't managing this problem, and people need a hand to help manage the feral pigs in this area. Robbie Katter this week's been super busy flying around his little Mooney plane, as everyone's become accustomed to seeing, but he's been dodging rain clouds and thunderstorms while he's been doing this to get to a number of events. Robbie Katter this week met with the Queensland Council of Social Services to discuss the housing issue in the Traeger electorate. This is something that's being shared by Queenslanders, whether you're in regional Queensland or in the cities. The housing crisis has most people right now reeling and wondering what the state government's actually doing about this. And I believe this week that the state government did meet to have a housing crisis summit in Brisbane, but very little has been said about how they're going to fix this problem in the regions. Robbie Katter also met this week with Sarah Gourley from the Association of Mining and Exploration Companies in Queensland. She's the CEO of the organisation, and they were talking about how to access the tremendous amount of wealth in the northwest. We need access, we need cheap electricity and projects like Copper String 2.0, but also rail lines into places like the Galilee Basin, which the KAP has advocated for some time, would help unlock that wealth. Not only for the mining companies that exist out there, but giving opportunities to those smaller mining operations, Australian-owned mining operations, to access the wealth that sits in the northwest. I must congratulate Robbie Katter this week. He's been fighting for this for over 5 years, but it's been announced by the state government that Charters Towers will get a CT scanner finally for that community. I'm continuing to fight for one in the Hinchinbrook electorate, and then particularly the Hinchinbrook Shire at the Ingham Hospital. And what CT scanners mean for regional patients is being able to have that medical equipment and the access to the medical equipment so we can have early diagnosis when it comes to strokes and all sorts of associated problems with people's health. Being able to administer the right drugs at the right time in a timely manner does two things. It helps make sure that we save lives, but also aids with recovery times. Also this week, it's been ravaged once again by the scourge of youth crime across towns, or everything from carjackings through the home invasions and properties and businesses being broken into. The numbers right now are alarming, and Re-KAP this week fronted the media, not only on behalf of Mount Isa and the Traeger electorate, but also all those across regional Queensland that are being attacked by this youth crime wave. What he's been calling for is the power to be shifted back to the victims. Unfortunately, we've seen time and time again where those that are defending their properties or defending their businesses or goods or even their own life become the perpetrator once QPS turns up to investigate. And that's not QPS's fault. That's just the way the legislation's been written. We've been asking for that shift to go back to the victims. You should be able to protect yourself in your home, your business and your property by any means necessary.
As thieves continue to tear up the streets, Katter's Australian Party has called for the state government to consider giving locals more powers to defend themselves.
The rates of criminal activity keep increasing. People are frustrated. The government's doing nothing.
Returning to the scene of an attempted carjacking, the MP believes people should have the freedom to stop young offenders.
There seems to be the spotlight in many cases turned back on the victims when they decide to try and defend themselves.
It's great to have Shane back in the electorate running around in Hill, and after a week down there in Parliament fighting for his electorate and all things that the people in Hill have been asking for, Shane got a chance to get out there and press the flesh this last weekend, and he attended the markets there, the Mission Beach Rotary markets, and he also got a chance to head over there to the Innisfail races. The Innisfail Annuals this year was won by a horse called Airborne, and it took out the Innisfail Cup. Shane Knuth last week in Parliament delivered a stirring speech, and he's quite upset that a project that he's been working on and advocating for nearly 15 years didn't even see the light of day when the state government delivered their $62 billion renewable energies plan. The Tully Millstream project would see water deviated from the Tully River through a tunnel in the mountain to a hydro project which would deliver essentially enough power to power 100,000 homes across Queensland. This would be a small undertaking. Half the tunnel is actually built, and this is a project that actually was set to take off in 1988. Unfortunately, this project's never seen fruition, and Shane Knuth will continue to advocate until the Tully Millstream project is actually built. It's a good project, it's got a business case attached to it, and it makes sense. Good work, Shane Knuth. Last week in Parliament, I had an opportunity on behalf of the sugar industry, grain growers, but also the biofuels sector and the producer of biofuels in Queensland and Australia to introduce legislation which was the Liquid Fuel Supply Bill that the KAP has been working on for some time. We're asking for two very simple things around ethanol in Queensland. One is the E10 that's been sold at the Bowser contain at least 9% ethanol, which is quite simple. Right now you can buy E10 from the Bowser and it may have as little as up to 1% ethanol in there, which consumers should be able to have some assurance around how much ethanol is in their E10. And the second thing we're asking for is doubling of the fines for non-compliance from fuel retailers when it comes to the 4% biofuels mandate that was introduced into Queensland 2 terms ago. We've seen not one fine being handed down for anyone that hasn't complied from the state government, but also we've seen over 160 exemptions being awarded to fuel retailers across Queensland. And that's not good enough. If this state government's fair dinkum about renewable fuels, they should be fair dinkum about biofuels in Queensland, and they need to support this bill. Also this week in Hinchinbrook, it's been school awards season. It's been from one to the other. I was invited to St Anthony's to be a part of their awards ceremony. Also to Ignatius Park on Wednesday night, and of course last night, my old stomping ground up there at Gilroy Santa Maria in Ingham. I got to attend that awards ceremony last night, and it was great to see not only that the kids, whether it's sporting or academic achievements, been recognised for their hard work, but also get a good understanding of how the school and the school students are going. Great to chat with everyone, and good to see that the schools across Hinchinbrook, no matter if they're state or private schools, are doing quite well this year. Today I'll be talking to students over there at St Anthony's School as they prepare for their final exams. It's a great opportunity every year to talk to them about leadership and the voting system in Queensland. And I also had a chance yesterday to head over to Lewards Primary School in Ingham, one of my old schools as well. I got to talk to the grade 5 students about not only leadership but also what I do as a Member of Parliament. And I think I got a chance to hand out some Nick Meadow stubby coolers there, which are for soft drink, of course, for the kids. And this week I got to sit down and have lunch and share some stories with our local war widows in Hinchinbrook at the Herbert River RSL. It was great to hear about their partners' stories and their husbands' stories over the years and how they contributed to our great state. We also acknowledge war widows all across Queensland. Now, for anyone that loves barramundi, today is actually National Barramundi Day, where we celebrate not only wild caught but farm barramundi being caught, sold and eaten all the way across Australia. We create a beautiful fresh product here in Queensland, and on National Barramundi Day this is a great opportunity for KAP to once again advocate for our bill that we seek to push through Parliament. The Country of Origin labelling bill that Robbie Katter introduced to Parliament calls for one simple thing: the menu that you see at your restaurant and cafe, bar or restaurant, just to have a little eye next to it if it's imported seafood. This is a great opportunity for us to support the seafood industry in Queensland. The KAP won't let the Premier off the hook on this one. If she says that she supports seafood in Queensland, whether it's wild caught or our commercial sector, we want to make sure that the Labor Party is supporting this bill. And this is one last opportunity and one last push for us to call on the Labor government to do that next week in Parliament. This week we saw the KAP's relocation sentencing policy gain momentum at the Local Government Association of Queensland meetings, where the Mareeba Shire Council backed it in their own format. They've called for remote sentencing to be adopted in the Mareeba Shire. Now this is great. This is great news, because now this is a motion that's passed through the Local Government Association. It should mean that the state government should be pricking their ears and listening to what mayors are calling for. It's great to see that this motion passed, and it's great to see that the Mareeba Shire Council is all about trying to fix the problems that they've got in their own backyard. The Canada Australian Party have had a relocation sentencing policy for over 5 years now, and the idea behind this is twofold. We've got people out there that want these kids off the streets. These people out there that are victims want to see these offenders held to account and have repercussions for their actions. But also we're seeing a reoffending rate from Cleveland Bay Detention Centre right now of 95% within the first 12 months. So the current youth justice system is not working. It is literally a revolving door scenario where kids go in, kids come out, they haven't been reformed and they're reoffending. We're talking about breaking the crime cycle here for these kids. Not only so these kids may have a future and a chance at a future, but also for society that expects these kids to be reformed after they've finished their detention stint. Now this week, before I wrap up the Canada Australian Party Re-KAP, I've got to give the Maraca Festival in the committee a plug. Ingham's Maraca Festival will be held this weekend, and we'll be doing everything from a pep parade on Saturday, judging of the Maraca Queen and Princesses, which will be presented on the Saturday night in Rotary Park. But also, we've got the freedom of entry of 3RAR happening at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, which is the Saturday, but also following closely after that will be the Maraca procession, where we close the street off, and everyone from small service groups through to our larger schools will have floats going around the main street of Ingham. It's quite a spectacle and quite a unique thing. Maraca Festival is a festival that's been going on for some time now, and it's been named after an Indigenous word meaning happy time or fun time. If you're in Ingham tomorrow, come down and check it out. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is the Canada's Australian Party Re-KAP for this week, where you've been now updated on what Canada's Australian Party MPs have been up to. I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you've enjoyed today's presentation, and we look forward to seeing you all again next week. And we'll be in Parliament, of course, but once again, have a great weekend.